Okay, so get this. We're diving into wild cards today.
Wild cards?
Yeah, you sent us a whole bunch of articles and research about, like, the science behind this fictional universe.
Yeah.
And one of the authors, Ian Tregillis,
Right.
is a physicist
Yeah.
at Los Alamos National Lab.
It's fascinating to see, like, a physicist writing fiction and, applying physics to a fictional virus. So
Exactly.
I was very intrigued.
So we're talking about a virus that, like, rewrites human DNA and, leads to all these different unpredictable outcomes like superpowers and deformities and all this stuff. So,
for anyone who doesn't know, it's a shared world.
Yeah.
Created by a bunch of authors, but spearheaded by George R.R. Martin.
Oh, wow.
The Game of Thrones guy.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's been around for a while, but what's really interesting is that this physicist, Tregillis, he actually came up with a formula to try and understand how this virus works.
A formula?
Yeah.
Wow.
Using something called the Lagrangian formulation from physics.
Okay, I'll admit that sounds kind of intimidating.
Right.
Can you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, so imagine you're trying to get from point A to point B.
Okay.
There's a bunch of different paths you could take, right? The Lagrangian formulation.
Yeah.
Basically, it helps you figure out which path uses the least amount of energy.
Okay.
The most efficient path.
So it's like finding the, like a cosmic GPS.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, apply that to the wild cards virus.
Okay.
He's essentially trying to map out all the potential ways that this virus could alter someone's DNA. And he's looking for the most likely or the most efficient paths that it might take.
Okay, so if it's all about, like, finding the most efficient path, does that mean that everyone's powers, like, are predetermined?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And that gets to the heart of what Tregillis is trying to do here.
Okay.
He's not saying that he can predict exactly who gets what power. Instead, he's trying to understand the broader patterns of the virus's behavior. So the Lagrangian formulation helps him create, like, a framework for exploring all the possibilities. But it doesn't dictate a specific outcome.
So it's less about saying, John will definitely develop telekinesis.
Right.
And more about just understanding.
And the overall tendencies of the virus.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
His work wasn't just, like, a fun side project.
Okay.
It was actually published in the American Journal of Physics.
Wow. So this was, like, peer-reviewed
Yeah.
by, like, real scientists?
Yeah.
That's really impressive for something.
Right.
Based on, like, a fictional concept.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of interest, particularly in how he managed to bridge the gap between science and fiction.
Yeah. Like, what were the reactions?
Well, some saw it as, like, a clever way to make complex physics more accessible, like a teaching tool, maybe?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Like, instead of reading a textbook,
exactly,
you could learn about physics.
Through the lens of superheroes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what can we actually learn from this?
That's where it gets really fascinating.
Okay.
I think that's what you're trying to get at with this deep dive.
Yeah.
Like, by exploring the science behind this virus, we might actually gain a better understanding of how real-world systems work.
Yeah.
Systems that also seem chaotic and unpredictable.
So you're saying, like, maybe we could use this to understand, like, the spread of diseases.
That's right.
Or even, like, climate change.
Exactly. Even chaos can have, like, underlying principles.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes looking at things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Like through the lens of physics to really understand those.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we're talking about, like, applying physics to understand a virus that gives people superpowers.
Yeah.
How does that even work?
So the wild cards virus, it's not like a regular virus.
Okay.
It doesn't just make you sick.
Okay.
It actually changes, like, the human genome.
So it's messing with our DNA.
Yeah.
But how does...
It rewrites who we are.
Oh, wow.
At the most basic level.
Okay, but how does that Lagrangian formulation come into play here?
Right.
Isn't that what physicists use to understand, like, the motion of objects?
Yeah, you're right. It is.
Yeah.
But remember,
the
Lagrangian formulation is all about finding the most efficient path.
Okay.
Regardless of what that system is.
So are you saying that we can think of DNA mutation as, like, a journey with all these different routes it can take?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Think of it this way.
Yeah.
When this virus infects somebody, their DNA has all these potential pathways. It could change along.
Okay.
Some might lead to, like, enhanced abilities, and some might lead to deformities or even death.
And the Lagrangian formulation helps us to figure out which of those paths are the most likely.
That's the idea. Tregillis is using it to map out those potential pathways for mutation.
Okay.
He's looking for the ones that require the least amount of what physicists call action.
Okay.
You can kind of think of it as the path of least resistance.
Okay, so if the virus is following these efficient paths,
Right.
wouldn't that make the outcomes more predictable?
Right.
It kind of seems like we're back to this idea of like a predetermined destiny.
Right. So that's where like the complexity of biological systems comes in.
Okay.
While the Lagrangian formulation can help us understand the tendencies of the virus, there are still countless variables at play. The human genome is incredibly intricate.
Right.
And the virus itself can even mutate.
Yeah.
Which adds another layer of unpredictability.
So we're not dealing with like billiard balls on a table.
Exactly.
We're talking about
a virus interacted with like the most complex structure.
Yeah, the most complex structure
known to humankind. Yeah. Our DNA.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, that's why Tregillis emphasizes that his formula is not like a fortune teller.
Yeah.
It's just a tool for exploration.
Yeah.
He's trying to build a framework for understanding all the possibilities, not dictating specific outcomes.
So even with this like sophisticated mathematical model, the wild cards universe is still like unpredictable.
It is.
Yeah.
And that unpredictability is what makes wild cards so compelling.
Yeah.
Both as a story and as a scientific concept.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Tregillis, as both a scientist and a storyteller, understands that the mystery, the element of chance, that's crucial.
It's like he's saying, hey, here's the science behind it, but like, let's not take away the wonder.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where the power of this research lies. It's not just about finding answers.
Yeah.
It's about asking new questions.
Like what?
Well, like understanding the patterns of this fictional virus help us understand the complexities of, real biological systems.
I mean, we've talked about how it could apply to like diseases and climate change, but are there other areas where this kind of thinking
absolutely
could be useful?
Yeah. Think about things like genetic engineering.
Okay.
Or personalized medicine. The wildcards virus, while it's fictional, it highlights the potential.
Yeah.
And also the risks of manipulating the human genome.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Like the ethical considerations are huge. Yeah. And while we're not creating, superheroes in labs, the idea of like tailoring treatments based on an individual's DNA, it's becoming more and more real.
Exactly. And so Tregillis' research, by bridging this gap between science and fiction, allows us to engage with these complex issues in a way that's both, intellectually stimulating, but also thought-provoking.
So it's not just about like, cool superpowers and all these like fantastical scenarios. It's about using those to explore like real world scientific and ethical challenges.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
Yeah.
We're not just learning about like a fictional virus.
Right.
We're using it as a lens to examine our own relationship with science.
Yeah.
And the implications of its advancements.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that like a fictional thing can spark all these conversations about real science and ethics.
It really shows how powerful storytelling can be.
Yeah.
Like science fiction.
Yeah.
When it's done well.
Yeah.
It can help us explore complex issues.
Right.
And really push the boundaries of our imagination.
Absolutely. And in this case, like Tregillis takes it even further by like actually grounding it in real science.
Yeah, he brings in real scientific principles.
Right, and by doing that, it's like he opens up
a whole nother level of engagement.
It's not just like a good story.
Yeah.
You're also like, wait, what's the science behind this?
Yeah, exactly. And then you start thinking about the implications.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what do you think Tregillis wants readers to like take away from this?
Well, I think it's kind of both.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's telling a really cool story.
Yeah.
Creating this world with interesting characters and high stakes and drama.
Right.
But I also think he's like trying to get people to think critically about the connection between science and fiction.
Yeah.
and the future we're creating.
It's like he's saying, hey, this is a wild ride, but also, like, what are the choices we're making?
Exactly. And these questions become even more relevant.
Okay.
When you think about how fast science is advancing in the real world.
Oh, for sure.
Like gene editing, artificial intelligence, biotechnology. This isn't sci-fi anymore.
Yeah. It's
like, this is real stuff.
Happening now.
And it's moving fast.
So it's almost like he's using this as like a cautionary tale or like a thought experiment to get us to think about the consequences.
Right, like even with good intentions.
Right.
When we mess with like the fundamental building blocks of life.
Exactly.
There can be unintended consequences.
Like even with the most like rigorous scientific method.
There's always a chance for the unknown.
There's always uncertainty.
And that uncertainty, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
It just reminds us to be careful.
Yeah.
And to think about ethics.
Yeah.
As much as we think about the benefits.
Totally. So as we wrap up this like deep dive into wild cards, what's like the big takeaway for now?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that science isn't just cold, hard facts.
Yeah.
It's also about imagination.
Uh-huh.
Creativity.
Right.
And being open to exploring the unknown.
Yeah.
Even through fiction. Sometimes those fictional explorations can lead us to some really amazing insights.
That's beautifully said.
Thanks.
Yeah. And it's like a reminder that the line between science and fiction is kind of blurry.
It's definitely blurry.
Yeah. And by embracing both, we can really like understand the world better.
For sure.
Yeah, so the next time you like pick up a sci-fi book or watch a movie or whatever, don't just like enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Ask questions.
Yeah, ask questions like, what if?
Yeah, exactly.
What are the scientific principles here? What could this tell us about our world?
Yeah.
Keep those questions in mind and...
Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe you'll bridge the gap between fiction and reality.
Yeah.
Just like Tregillis.
This has been a really cool deep dive.
Yeah, it has.